Financial confidence. It's not just some like airy, ushy-gushy concept. It is something that is so critical for all Canadians in terms of like financial outcomes over time. And yet what the research shows is there are some real differences between men and women on financial confidence. The Financial Consumer Agency of Canada and researchers at Carleton University in Ottawa wanted to look at this question of financial confidence, building financial confidence, and the effectiveness of a couple of different online interventions to help improve the confidence of young women. So we've got two guests to talk about what they found in that research. First, Johanna Peetz, professor of psychology at Carleton University. Joining her, Ruth Stephen, the director of the Behavioural Finance Lab at the FCAC. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to be
Ruth,
here.
let me start with you. Broadly speaking, how does financial confidence differ between men and women? I think we probably have a sense anecdotally that that's accurate in finance. It's also accurate, unfortunately, in other areas of our lives too. But what would you say are some insights around finances and confidence?
Thanks, Bruce. So if I could take a bit of a step back, I will mention that November is Financial Literacy Month. And the theme of this year's Financial Literacy Month is money on your mind, talk about it, as you can see by my background.
Yes.
And so we're aiming to destigmatize conversations about money by encouraging Canadians to share their financial experiences with friends and family or speak with a trusted financial professional. And so our national financial literacy strategy highlights women as one particular population that can benefit from targeted approaches to increasing their financial literacy. And research shows that women struggle more often with their finances compared to men. For example, they're more likely to need to borrow to meet day to day expenses. They're more likely to spend more than their income, and they're more likely to feel less financially confident. And we know that higher financial confidence is predictive of responsible financial behaviors. People with higher financial confidence tend to be more likely to engage in positive financial behaviors like having emergency savings, budgeting, keeping up with bills, and financial planning. And so this financial confidence gap starts very early, as early as kindergarten, in fact, where little girls are told that they aren't as good at math as boys, even though from an objective measurement approach they are as good. And it continues into adolescence and adulthood with fewer young women choosing fields in science, tech, engineering, and math. And so ultimately, girls grow into women who have less confidence with respect to dealing with money and numbers. And so there's a clear need to adopt gender based approaches for financial literacy interventions to meet the unique needs of women.
I think lots of head nods around that. We have had many conversations on this show about the gap and some things that people are endeavoring to do to improve financial confidence for women in particular. Johanna, I want to get into the research here. What specifically were you trying to test and understand?
We were really trying to make young women more confident in our study. So we recruited over a thousand young Canadian women from all over the country, and we assigned them to one of two interventions. One was trying to increase their confidence by teaching them financial terms. So they had to look up terms like, what does net worth mean? What is a TFSA? And they had to explain that to other participants on a website, like Think Urban Dictionary style website. So it was find a term and explain it, find and explain. And the other intervention was acting more on the social norms idea. So they had to think of a time that they felt financially confident, describe that on a website, and then also read other young women's financial confidence stories. So people told about times where they talked with a financial advisor, like Ruth was saying, that talking to other people about money can create confidence, can make you feel like, oh, I actually know what I'm talking about. So they were describing these experiences, they were reading about others' experiences. And we also had a condition where they did both interventions, and we had a condition where they did neither. So that was our control. And we looked at whether or not immediately after doing this task, and it only took about 5 minutes online, whether immediately after doing this task, they felt more confident. And they did. In all the intervention conditions, they felt about 6% more confident than they did before. And then we also saw whether it lasted. So we contacted them again a week later and contacted them again a month later, and we're interested in seeing whether or not this effect persisted. We found that a week later, it was still there. They still felt a little more confident. And a month later, it was mostly gone, like that 5-minute little test of telling stories about financial confidence. There was no difference really anymore between conditions. But what we did find was that just being in the study, just completing these questionnaires over and over again, 3 times, just talking about money and your thoughts about money and whether or not you save over and over again, that actually had the strongest effect. So at the end of the study, everybody, regardless of condition, they were all more confident than at the beginning of the study.
I was intrigued looking at the bar graphs that recall and share did slightly better. And I'm curious as to what you would infer from that as it relates to gender. And I'll tell you, my preconceived notion is connected to the work that we at Credit Canada do in financial coaching. When I have a room, and I've led programs entirely to women, rooms that are mostly women and rooms that are a mix of all genders. And I find that women are more interested in and more able to engage on some of these, what you might call softer skills, and being vulnerable and sharing their experience and all that. How does that connect with what we know about how women prefer to engage with the world and their comfort level on sharing?
Yeah, that's a great link. So I do think that it might be an intervention particularly well suited to people who are socially competent and who have friends that they'd like to talk about their experiences regardless of topic. So I do think it's an intervention or a thing people can do that is suited to their life outside of this experimental study we ran, right? So thinking about like, oh, just talk about your experiences more with your friends is like a pretty easy message to send beyond just do it on the study online. Ruth, did you want to add to that?
Sure, I completely agree. And one other thing I would add is that there's such a strong impact of having positive role models, especially for young women. And so the recall and share activity was sort of like looking at what other young women have achieved, and thinking about a time where you have done something similar. So that can be extremely powerful in terms of both the positive role model aspect and also the social norming. Like, oh, it's actually possible for other young women to make positive financial decisions and to manage their money well. So that can be really powerful as well.
Ruth, in a world of rainbows and butterflies, what would you like the leaders who have a say in how financial services work in this country, not just in a for-profit world, but nonprofits and governments and academic environments, what would you love the application of this research to be?
Well, one thing is very, very clear is that there is no one size fits all approach to increasing people's financial literacy. And so we need to understand the communities that are experiencing higher levels of vulnerability and design interventions, programs, policies to target their specific needs. The other thing I would say is that research shows, and we all know from personal experience, is that knowledge is not enough. Like, we can know that we should eat well, exercise more, but the actual behavioral change is really challenging. So adopting behaviorally informed approaches, this is priority 5 in our national financial literacy strategy, can really help us achieve the results that we're looking for in terms of actually creating those positive behavioral changes in individuals that will strengthen their financial well-being.
Really interesting stuff. And I love that we've got some data, more data that brings to life what the behavioral scientists have been, talking about and pointing to for years. Thank you so much to you both.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Johanna Peetz is a professor of psychology at Carleton University, and Ruth Stephen is director of the Behavioural Finance Lab at the FCAC. They were here to talk about a study called From Clicks to Confidence, and looking at interventions that would make a difference in financial confidence for young women.